Hey, what's going on, everyone? This is Mitch. Good Thursday morning to you all. Hope you guys are doing awesome out there this morning and having a wonderful start to your day. And I hope everyone's been having a great week out there so far. I know I'm waking up feeling a lot better compared to yesterday morning, which if you tuned in, I mentioned I was really dragging, woke up a little bit late, messed up my routine, but this morning back on track, ready to rock and roll. So I hope you guys are feeling well also. But we do have a lot of weather to talk about. We'll first cover today's weather. There's a couple areas to mention that has a risk once again of strong to severe thunderstorms, and a pretty large area of the country at least has a risk of storms. But we've been stuck in kind of the same pattern where we've had light flow overlapping, just enough moisture across areas of the plains and high plains. That'll be the same setup today, tomorrow, and probably the next day. But all eyes are already beginning to shift to next week, and I think this could start as early as Sunday, but really Monday and Tuesday, especially Monday, could be significant severe weather days. So we're going to speak on that, obviously, but we'll cover today's weather first. If you're not interested in that and you just tune in because you want to know what's happening next week, then definitely utilize those timestamps where you can just jump right ahead to that discussion, which we're going to be discussing as much detail as we can this far out. We'll break down the ingredients that's coming together. We'll break down the outlooks, which we have upgraded to an enhanced risk already pretty far out for Monday. So we'll break it all down. We'll discuss it, and then we'll round the video off with a Bible devotion if you're interested in tuning in to that. So if you guys have not subscribed, certainly consider doing that. Like the video if you like it. And if anybody has anything that we can pray over, things like that, if it's unspoken, please put that in the comments below. Not only will I pray over it, but a whole lot of other people will pray over your prayer requests too. So prayer is powerful. Put it in the comments, and we got you covered. More importantly, God's got you covered. So with all that being said, let's get rocking and rolling this morning. So this is what's going on right now. A lot of areas of energy. South Dakota, we got a lot of heavy rain, even mixing with some snow in the western sections of the state. We got a little bit of energy in Wyoming. We got energy. And when I'm saying energy, I'm meaning rain and storms, heavy rain, moving across Kansas, areas of southern Nebraska, northern Nebraska. And then we got just a flat-out line of strong to severe storms rumbling right over the Red River and just north and south of it. And this has been the common theme. We get, the strong to severe storms that'll fire over the western, the western high plains of like Texas, Oklahoma, Kansas. And then eventually the energy will make its way overnight into the eastern sections of those states, and then we wake up to it the next morning. So that's been the same general pattern over the last few days, and I think it'll be the same pattern going over the next couple days. A little bit of rain shower activity across the upper Midwest and the Great Lakes region, and then we just have more of a summer type pattern across the southeast, where we're just getting a lot of pop-up activity. I mentioned this yesterday on my social media platform. I live here in central South Carolina, and the pattern is just really outflow boundary driven, which means it's really like pulse type storms, where a storm will pop off, and it'll just pop off like rain cooled air, and then that'll actually initiate more storms away from that storm, and then that storm will weaken. And that's really stuff we see in summer, and that's been the pattern over the southeast because of the ridge influence right now. But this is what's going on right now. I don't want to get too much more hung up on that. Watches, mornings, and advisories. We've been waking up to pretty quiet starts, and then of course as we get into the afternoon, evening hours, the atmosphere becomes unstable. We get a lot of severe thunderstorm watches, severe thunderstorm warnings, and that'll be the case later on this afternoon also. But right now, it's pretty quiet. Got a couple winter weather advisories, some red flag warnings across western Colorado, things like that. But in general, it's a quiet start. Now, the Storm Prediction Center outlook, I do want to mention, huge area in light green has at least a general risk of thunderstorms. So some of these areas in the just light green color, we'll get a lot of storms today. For example, in the areas of the southeast will be quite stormy, and some of these storms will hit strong to severe limits. But in general, the biggest area to watch for is across the central and southern plains and the high plains for strong to severe thunderstorm activity, kind of what we've been seeing, except today the slight risk extends all the way into sections of Colorado, like Denver up to Cheyenne, Wyoming. Has a marginal risk, level 1 out of 5 in the dark green. Wichita down to Oklahoma City, Tulsa, Norman, Wichita Falls, all the way down to the Fort Worth area, San Angelo, and then does go a tiny bit into New Mexico, but even all the way into areas of southern Colorado, Pueblo. But of course, the slight risk has most of our attention, level 2 out of 5 in the yellow area, and this includes Midland, Fort Stockton again, Abilene, Lubbock. We've had big storms down here. Not everybody's getting rain, but when you do, you could get not only rain, but a lot of hail, even a brief tornado. But Woodard, Amarillo, up to Dodge City. Then you wrap it up to the northwest, up into the plains of Colorado. So what's driving this? Tornado risk right now is at a 2%. So Dodge City right in the middle of this, down to Woodard, down to, say, just east of Amarillo, Memphis, Pampa, Perryton, Liberal, up to Garden City, all the way up to Lyman. Somebody help me with the punctuation of that. You guys have corrected me on this a lot. I'm not sure if it's Lyman, Lehman. Anyways, don't want to get too hung up on that. But guys, I do want to mention, I wouldn't be surprised if we get a bump up to a 5% risk here in maybe the panhandle of Texas and Oklahoma, or just western Oklahoma. And I'll talk to you about why here in a second. But wind threat, right now, I mean, there's not a lot of flow in the atmosphere. So the damaging wind threat is not very high, but, it's there. But the hail threats could be significant, quite literally. So in the yellow area, 15% risk of hail exceeding 1 inch in diameter or larger. But once again, if you live in that black outlined area, which covers sections of the yellow 15% area, this is where you have a 10% risk of significant hail, which is Storm Prediction Center considers 2 inch in diameter or larger. So that does include up to Greensburg, Ashland, just south of Dodge City, Woodard, all the way down to Memphis, all the way down to Lubbock. So this could, broaden, get a little bit larger, things like that. But the atmosphere will support some pretty large hail today, and it has over the last couple of days. And that's normally the case really close to the dry line. So now the risk of flash flooding is a little bit higher today. So if you live in this yellow area, which covers a lot of area, from southwest Iowa all the way through southeast Nebraska, a section of northwest Missouri, through the heart of Kansas, through the heart of Oklahoma, all the way into northern areas of Texas. This entire yellow area, guys, 15% risk of flash flood guidance being exceeded. So, some of these areas have already picked up a lot of rain over the last couple of days, and it's raining really hard right now in some of these areas. So there is a risk of flash flooding. And you got to watch out for some of these storms that just dance around some of the same areas in the southeast, southern Alps, mid-south also. And they have been in some cases. So could get some flash flooding across the south also today. But speaking of the south, the southeast, I'm not going to zoom into each section like I've been doing just because there's just a general risk of thunderstorms. Well, we start to get into the afternoon hours. What you'll notice is, this is early to mid-afternoon, around 3 p.m. Eastern Time, 2 p.m. Central Time. You're seeing a lot of thunderstorm activity, especially into this area. So, the mid-south, southern Alps, but it could very well be, down here also. But a lot of thunderstorm activity fires up, especially eastern Tennessee, for example, pretty early in the afternoon. But then we start to make it into the evening, a little bit of forward motion. We start to get more thunderstorm activity in South Carolina, the Piedmont, North Carolina, a little bit of activity in Georgia, but it's really scattered everywhere. Scattered and smothered is what I like to say, like Waffle House. But very pulse in nature. Yes, you see movement with these storms, but a lot of them kind of fire up and then kind of implode. But it looks like a more decent structure of storms tries to form in northern central Georgia later this evening, and then tries to make it into South Carolina by the time we're waking up tomorrow morning for a Friday. So, and we're waking up to a lot of storm activity, potentially, just east of the Mississippi River into the boot of Missouri, maybe for, Friday morning. So we'll see that. But, the pulse nature storms are always tough to really figure out. But, we get into about midday today in the northeast. We start to get into the afternoon, some shower, maybe even some thunderstorm activity tries to fire with a little piece of energy riding to the north. And we could get some scattered downpours, some heavy bursts of rain up here in Maine, New Hampshire, Vermont. Maybe some shower activity as far south as Albany. And then by the time we get to later in the evening, still dealing with a kind of a banding of heavy rain in central Maine. This is like midnight tonight, some scattered showers across the southern tier of New York, northern PA. And then we start to get into tomorrow morning, and we could be greeted to some rain around the West Virginia, PA, Ohio border for your Friday morning. All in all, not a very active day, but there will be some moisture around. The south central U.S., we're going to break it down section by section, state by state, but I do want to show you a broad look just to see everything that's going on right now we got this line of storms surging across the Red River, and then this will become outflow boundary driven, which means rain-cooled air will shoot off these storms and then fire up more storms. So you can see all the storm activity in Arkansas scattered about, even Louisiana. Heck, it looks like we try to get some supercells down here in central Texas that dance around, but then you see the main show that fires up back here. These look like big supercells in the eastern panhandle of Texas. There's still a lot of storm activity this evening down here in central and eastern Texas, and a lot of storm activity in northern Louisiana tonight into Arkansas. So there's a lot of little features dancing around. It's definitely one of those days where you just want to have a reliable radar. Don't rely too heavily on these future radar simulations. But it seems like we've looked at this area of Texas for the last week, and here we are again this morning. Starting it off, here's the time frame. It's around lunchtime, 12 p.m. Not a whole lot going on, but we start to get into about 4 p.m., 5 p.m., 6 p.m., seeing some storm activity near Fort Stockton, south of Midland, just west of San Angelo. And then we could just get a powerful supercell or two. Not sure where it's going to hit, who it's going to hit. But you see more activity kind of north of Midland, a big spring over to Post. But we could get one or two very strong supercells down here too. And listen, we don't know who these are going to hit. I say this every time. But if you get hit by one of these, it's important to know that you could get some very large hail and a brief spin up is possible. Not a lot of flow to work with, but still enough to maybe do a brief tornado. And then you see some stronger cells up here near Post, Big Spring. Doesn't show a whole lot down here, but then we get into about midnight, and then we get after, and then things seem pretty calm. Now we move it a little bit further east in Texas. There's a lot going on. For example, you got the line of storms cruising right now through northern Texas, and whatever that energy will do, we got to figure it out. But it really shows this energy. These storms really tapping into some more storm fuel cape for these storms to really mooch off of kind of in the southern areas of these storms. So around 1 p.m. shows some powerful storms over the Dallas-Fort Worth area. And it shows some energy once again getting into the Arklatex, shows a surging line of storms getting all the way down to Waco this afternoon, Tyler. And we just have to watch this. I wouldn't be surprised. Right now, let's see. Right now, it looks like the marginal risk kind of stops in this area, but I wouldn't be surprised if that marginal risk, extends to include more of northeast Texas and later outlooks. It's just something to watch here, but this is around 6 p.m. tonight. Could be a very stormy afternoon, evening for northeast and northern Texas. Could get a lot of storm activity near Austin, College Station. And then we just have to watch for the lingering activity to your west. You see it's one supercell kind of between Abilene, Wichita Falls, and Childress. But it does look like we're going to wake up to a quieter start tomorrow morning for your Friday. But this is an interesting area to watch. We'll include the rest of Texas and Oklahoma in this. Leftover morning energy will continue to cruise off that you see right here to the east. And then what happens after that? The atmosphere becomes unstable again. We get into 4 p.m., some scattered storms begin to fire Elk City, Oklahoma City. And then we have to watch kind of around Amarillo points east. These cells here could mature very quickly and produce all hazards. Gigantic hail, a tornado. I wouldn't be surprised if we get a 5% risk of a tornado issued in this area. Not sure if it'll happen, but you see the circle area coming off these storms where we have stronger, potentially rotating updrafts. So, look at this storm near Childress. We don't know if this is exactly where these storms will form, but I do think these storms will form. It's just trying to figure out where they do form. So 8 p.m., 9 p.m., 10 p.m., these storms try to get close to that Texas-Oklahoma border. And, there'll be some storm chasers on these storms. I know a lot of people tune into the folks storm chasing. These have the chance to have some very photogenic structures, I think, because they'll kind of be isolated on their own. So this is kind of a storm chaser's paradise kind of setup when it comes to trying to get photogenic type shots of these storms. But of course, our priority here is the safety of people. But if you live here in the eastern panhandle of Texas, the panhandle of Oklahoma, and then western Oklahoma, and then northern areas of Texas down here, be aware of these storms. You might not get a drop of rain, but there's a chance you get hit by one of these, and it could produce all hazards. And you look at the updraft Felicity swath, it picks up on those 2 or 3 main supercells. You see how highlighted these areas are? Yeah, I mean, wherever these form, it could get wild. And if you look at the latest run, it's picking up on it again, but it only goes 18 hours out. So, but moving forward here, I do want to show you Colorado. This is 10 a.m. Mountain Time, and we get into about lunchtime. Not a whole lot going on. And, you know, Colorado's notorious for wild weather, but storms, they're notorious for dumping a lot of hail. You know, we got a storm up here near Fort Collins. We got storms firing just east of Denver. Could be right on top of Denver. We got this storm north of Sterling. But it doesn't show like anything too wild. I mean, we got this lone storm kind of between Lamar, Pueblo, out here in the eastern plains of Colorado. This could do something funky. We got to watch this. But maybe 1 or 2 supercells that could produce a lot of hail, maybe a spin up. But overall, it doesn't show anything too crazy. Now, we get into after midnight tonight. It does show a complex of storms developing in eastern Colorado and then, you know, making their way into Kansas. But the HRRR model doesn't show a whole lot. But there will definitely be storms in eastern Colorado today. Kansas, this is kind of an everywhere type day. This morning, we're already dealing with these storms. Wherever that energy does, it'll continue to cruise east. Could weaken, could maintain itself as it gets closer to the eastern section of the state. When we start to get into about 6 p.m., 7 p.m., 8 p.m., just some scattered storms out there, isolated really. We got some action in northeast Kansas, but, you know, the HRRR model, this particular run, shows most of the action in the northeastern portion of the state, Manhattan, and anywhere surrounding that area, but doesn't show a whole lot in the slight risk area down here in south west Kansas near Dodge City. It does show some storms finally moving into the area after midnight. And then it shows a lot more storminess developing well after midnight, which will wake up again to a very stormy morning, I think, across areas of Kansas like we are this morning. But doesn't show a whole lot going on the prime time of the afternoon and evening in that slight risk area of Kansas. That doesn't mean nothing's going to fire, just doesn't show a whole lot happening. So I will mention a lot of rain could fall in certain areas between now and 1 a.m. Central Time Saturday. We're going to have splotches of 1 to as much as 3 inches of rain. It really likes Oklahoma and northern Texas for the most rain, so that's why you have a risk of excessive rainfall in these areas. Now, the north central U.S., kind of the same deal as like Kansas, just scattered areas of energy, rain. I mean, we have a more concentrated area of rain that makes it all the way into eastern Nebraska, Omaha, Lincoln. Starts to get some heavy rainfall, some storms. Scattered rain showers across southern Minnesota. We got rain just all day for most of the state of South Dakota, getting into North Dakota eventually. And we could get some storms this evening that move through like Des Moines and surrounding areas. Rain starts to move into western areas of Wisconsin. And then we start to get into the overnight hours all the way into tomorrow morning. Rain will continue to cross across areas of the Midwest and wake up to a rainy start across areas of the UP of Michigan, Wisconsin, and then areas of Illinois, and could be dealing with some storms also in southern Illinois. So rainfall between now and 1 a.m. Saturday. A lot of rain for Iowa, eastern Nebraska. Few inches of rain could fall, and just scattered amounts everywhere else. So we could get a lot of rain up into southern Minnesota too, a couple inches or an inch, and then areas of Wisconsin. So western U.S. Continues to be pretty quiet. Energy continues to surge off the northern Rockies. We got some snow in the mountainous terrains of Idaho and Wyoming, southern Montana. Maybe some rain showers along the Oregon coastline, and we could get a little rain shower activity along the California coastline. But all in all, quiet for now. Now, we are going to have a storm system that we're about to talk about that will move into California. That will bring some weather, and then that'll bring the severe weather event that we're about to talk about for the middle of the country. But today, pretty quiet. Temperatures, man, it's warm across the Midwest, the Ohio Valley, 80s into the Great Lakes region also. Look at lower Michigan. Detroit might get into the 80s. Southern Ontario, 70s. And look at the Northeast, a beautiful, beautiful day. It'll feel like spring up here for sure. 60s, 70s, even warmish, not really warm, but even a lot more comfortable, even in the mountainous areas of New England. Now, you do see this area of cooler air across the Mid-South and areas of the South. This is just clouds and rain, but still humid. It's definitely not a crisp fall air mass. We're starting to get slowly more and more away from that. By the time we get in August, we'll be begging for it again, but it'll be warm where it doesn't rain a whole lot. For example, in Florida, it'll get into the 80s and 90s. It's been a warm week down here. And then out west, we got this pocket of cooler air because of rain. But if you're away from that, you warm up pretty decently. So moving forward, talking about the next couple days, tomorrow for your Friday, once again, a large area of the country runs the risk of general risk of thunderstorms, just a risk of thunderstorms. But there is an area to watch that has a marginal risk of severe weather. In fact, even a risk of thunderstorms across the central Rockies into the west coast. But we do once again have that marginal risk of severe weather across areas of New Mexico, Texas, and Oklahoma. Watch out for that. And then day 3, excuse me, which is for Saturday. Once again, pretty large area that has a risk of thunderstorms stretching from New England through the southeast, the mid-south, deep south, and then we do have a marginal risk of severe weather across areas of western Texas, eastern New Mexico again, and then we have a risk of thunderstorms even across the western U.S. Now going forward, this is for day 4. So this is what? Get my days mixed up. This is for Sunday. There is going to be a risk of severe weather Sunday, but right now their confidence isn't high enough to put a 15% risk. But I do think as we're waking up tomorrow morning, we will likely at least have a marginal risk. I would say probably across this area right into here. We'll probably have a marginal risk of severe weather. And, this might be larger, might be smaller. And I could see Sunday upgrading to a slight risk eventually. But right now, confidence isn't there. And, of course, this is at day 4. So if it's at a marginal risk, it's not going to show up. Day 5. Same system. Intensifies. We get the full ejection of this trough. Overlapping ingredients come together that we're about to talk about. And we have an enhanced risk, level 3 out of 5, already for day 5. This is for next Monday. Well, you can say kind of this coming Monday now, here in the next few days. And this includes a good chunk of the state of Iowa into southern areas of Minnesota, southwestern areas of Wisconsin, northwestern areas of Missouri. It does include extreme eastern Nebraska, including Omaha, and a very small section of the northeast corner of Kansas. A slight level 2 out of 5 risk of severe weather does go around it in the yellow. So this does include Duluth over to Green Bay. The rest of the state of Wisconsin gets down to Rockford into central areas of Illinois, cuts off Missouri, gets all the way down into the heart of Oklahoma, and does extend all the way back into central Kansas and a little bit deeper into eastern Nebraska, and does include sections of eastern South Dakota. So this could be a big day. In fact, I could see this getting to a moderate risk. It's hard for me to say I could see this getting into a high risk of that. I mean, it takes extreme ingredients coming together, but man, it does look pretty, ingredient-wise, it looks pretty bad for Monday. And then I do think day 6, which is next Tuesday, could be a big severe weather day too. And this stretches from Cleveland, Detroit, all the way down to just about the Wichita Falls, Dallas-Fort Worth area. Includes, St. Louis, Fort Smith, Fayetteville, Columbia, Missouri, Indianapolis, Bloomington, Peoria, Fort Wayne, Toledo, Cleveland, Kalamazoo, South Bend, Chicago. I think that Tuesday could be a big day also. So what's driving this? We're going to skip ahead a couple days because between now and about Saturday is pretty much generated off the same kind of pattern. Just light flow into the plains, enough surface moisture, overlapping to create some marginal to slight risk severe weather days. We get into Sunday, things change. So I want you to notice, and what we're looking at here is 500 millibar wind flow chart. So this is like the mid-level jet. This is winds at about 18,000 feet up in the air. Okay, so I'm going to put my cursor over this. This is 70 knots. This is the speed the winds are going at 18,000 feet up in the air, 70 knots, which is like 80, 85, 90 miles per hour. And obviously, that's not the correct conversion exactly, but this isn't going to be exactly what it is, just model guidance. So that's why I'm just kind of everywhere here. So what this is, this little dip right here that you're seeing is a trough digging down to the western U.S. So the flow around this, if you look at this wind bar, for example, you see that flag, it's pointing that way. that means the flow is coming from that way. So it's coming down like this. So if you can look, and remember, these videos do show up in 1080, so you can, sometimes by default it shows up in 720, so make sure it's in 1080. But you can see how the flow kind of dives down into here, and then it kind of comes more so out the west to east down here, and then ejects from southwest to northeast like this. Okay, that is a dip in the jet, and this is coming down, and we got a lot of flow because of the dip in the jet and the jet stream digging down, and all this flow in the atmosphere is going to eject across the country. So this is for this coming Sunday afternoon. So just remember, there's already a lot of moisture kind of hanging out around this area. Okay, dew points are already in the 60s. I mean, even some 70s in some areas. So the flow is just entering the picture. Okay, so this is why I do think, and not so much that, but this is why I do think we're going to have a severe weather threat Sunday, probably across this region, because the beginning portion of this mid-level jet is beginning to work over a pretty moist air mass, which is right in here. Okay, but the main threat comes in Monday. I want you to watch how all this wind energy in the atmosphere, flow in the atmosphere, and I use the word flow a lot. If you're a first-time viewer, you'll notice I use that word a lot, and that's just the best, easiest term to use. I think you guys, as the audience, can understand with, when I say flow, I'm meaning like pushing mechanism to get these storms going in the atmosphere, and also wind energy for damaging winds, even tornadoes. As we get a little bit closer, we'll look at features like the low-level jet. This is the mid-level jet. Low-level jet, the winds are coming from a different direction, more out the south, more than likely. And that turning with height, okay, puts a spin in the atmosphere, and that's where we can really figure out where the best tornado threat is. So we start to get into Monday morning. What you notice is now this flow is really extending more so across the plains. Okay, so this is setting the stage kinematic-wise for a better environment for just storms and lift in the atmosphere. And then we get to the prime heating of the day, Monday afternoon, Monday evening. We're just going to take it to Monday evening. Let's take it Monday afternoon. So at this point now, flow is coming down here, and then it's just shooting right across the middle of the country. Okay, this is just a steady southwesterly flow right across the middle of the country, overlapping a very moist environment, which I'll show you here in a second. So kinematic-wise, you check it off the box. Tons of flow in the atmosphere. Now, next thing we'll look at, and we'll start looking at that tomorrow, is the low-level jet. Where's your best low-level flow? And you really find out where that is when you are trying to pinpoint where the short wave is, or where a surface feature, surface low is. You know, could it be into here? Could it be into here? Is it way up here? Is it down here? Those little surface features are what enhances the low-level environment, the low-level flow. You know, flow about a mile above your head, 4,000 to 6,000 feet up in the air. So we got to find where the little short wave is, which is a fancy word for energy embedded in this mid-level flow. So we got to figure out where that is. Okay, wherever that is, that's probably where your best damaging wind threat will be, and tornado threat will be. And if it's overlapping a very moist environment, then of course you have a much higher severe weather threat. But you keep going here, and then you get into, you know, Monday night, and we start to get into Tuesday morning. And you notice that as we're getting into Tuesday morning, now some of our flow has shifted a little bit, but in general, it is now going more so kind of over this area right here, which is why that 15% risk area shifts a little bit further to the south and east, because the trough and the flow in the atmosphere begins to shift in general further east, north, etc. So certainly got to watch, especially Monday, but the day before and the day after also, especially the day after. But we need to watch Sunday too. I would watch it. But, you know, after we get past Tuesday, what happens? Not quite sure. You know, I do think there'll be a risk of severe weather for for Wednesday also, but it's just, I do think that it is just kind of a dramatic 2 to 3 day period, really a 2-day period, and this moves in and out. But what happens after that, we're not quite sure. I think we just need to focus in on what's right in front of us. But, you know, speaking on the moist air, this is Sunday. We already have a surge of right moist air. Dew points in the 60s support severe weather. Okay, dew points in the 50s in certain areas will get the job done, depending on other things in the environment, if the lapse rates are favorable. But 60s and 70s, that is high enough moisture content in the surface to support severe weather. So remember, by Sunday afternoon, that jet is moving in. We got just enough flow kind of in this area, overlapping this pretty moist air. So that's why we have the best overlapping ingredients. Really, I mean, I would say right into here, honestly, because just enough flow is going over this moisture at the surface to have the overlapping ingredients for severe weather. But dew points in the 60s will get the job done. The reason you're not getting severe weather chances like over here for Sunday is because you don't have as much flow in the atmosphere. But guys, there is a chance that you will still have a severe weather threat even into Missouri and Iowa, Arkansas, further east in Oklahoma, even in the Sunday afternoon. Because even just a little bit of light flow over this very moist environment will get the job done. But, as we start to move into Monday, guys, as we know, we get the full ejection of this trough, of this kinematic wind field right over this very moist and ripe environment. And, you get a huge area that supports severe weather right into here, in my opinion. And, so we're going to get a widespread significant severe weather day for Monday. And then, even as we start to move, guys, into, Tuesday, it's still there, except cold front begins to suppress the moist field down a little bit, which is pretty normal. And now we get more of a southwest and northeast oriented sector of moist air, but tons of moisture in the atmosphere all the way up into Canada, Michigan, dew points in the 60s, even pockets of 70s. So it's plenty of moist air in this area to get the job done for severe weather. So with all that moist air in the environment, of course, you get these higher Cape levels. So Sunday, already a ton of storm fuel in the atmosphere, 1,000, 2,000, 2,500 joules per kilogram in storm fuel. This is what we call mixed layer Cape. So this is the fuel in the atmosphere that actually get these storms going. There's a lot of it already there Sunday, except, are you going to be able to break a cap, get these storms going? Is there enough flow to really get them going? But, man, we get into Monday. This is the concerning thing. Euro global model showing explosive storm fuel in the atmosphere right in that enhanced risk area across Iowa, across Missouri. Over 3,500 joules per kilogram in mixed layer Cape. That is explosive storm fuel. It's concerning. It really is. It's wild to have that much storm fuel that far north. And then, Monday we'll do it again. And even this is a ton of energy in the atmosphere over this slight risk area. Even putting my cursor over this grayed out area, 1,500 joules per kilogram. That is a ton of fuel in the atmosphere, even just 1,000. So, and looking at global models, we're not really going to see what's going on, but you'll notice kind of a low pressure right here kind of ejects, and we get storms across the northern sections of, and this is Monday morning, storms across Minnesota, storms across Wisconsin. But, we start to get into Monday, which is the big day. You're not seeing a whole lot in Iowa. That's why I don't really show this kind of stuff. But it does show some storms Monday evening, getting into Iowa and northern Missouri. And then eventually, as we're getting into Tuesday, it does show a lot of thunderstorm activity right in that slight risk area for next Tuesday afternoon, the 29th. Even storms all the way up into New York, Ohio. But we're just not even close to some of these short-range models at all, guys. So I'm going to check the time here. But, that is an update. We're good. That is an update on the event. We probably are going to start to double up the videos probably this weekend ahead of this system. But let's do a Bible devotion for you guys. Get back to this. This morning we are in 1 John chapter 2. So 1 John chapter 2, verse 15 through 17. It says, and many of y'all probably heard this before, or some pretty much have heard this before, but do not love the world or the things in the world. If anyone loves the world, the love of the Father is not in him. For everything in the world, the lust of the flesh, the lust of the eyes, and the pride in one's possessions, is not from the Father, but is from the world. And the world with its lust is passing away, but the one who does the will of God remains forever. So, wrote a couple things down, but don't be caught up in the world's fleeting desires is a huge thing, and instead focus on God's will in your life, which, I speak on a lot. Things of the world will distract you or consume you, and you don't want something that is passing away. This is huge. You don't want something that's just passing away. It's fleeting in the grand scheme of things to consume you. So one thing that has consumed me in the past, I always like to speak on examples of my own life, is YouTube and social media. Now, I think that personally I do a really good job of balancing what I do, I guess you would say, on the side with social media, with YouTube. I can handle a lot on my plate at one time. So I'm really good at balancing family time, social media stuff. But sometimes when things are just really popping off, it's tough. Sometimes I get consumed by my YouTube, for example. And I was really bad about that in the early stages of starting my YouTube. And you guys have been with me for a while, have probably seen flashes of it where I tell you guys, hey, I'm gonna get stuff together to start storm chasing, go live for you guys, and then all of a sudden a couple months go by and you're like, well, I guess he's not gonna do it. I think a great example is, I've told you guys many times that I'm going to make shirts and stuff and coffee mugs, and I still am probably gonna do that. But that is me really just feeling like, I'll be honest, that's just me feeling like I have to do that kind of stuff. But over the last several months, and I'm speaking of myself, I figured out that, I don't need to let this consume me. Because at the end of the day, God is using this. And I think most of you folks could probably say that, but God is using this and me and this platform, for example, being right now. But at the same time, I think it's important not to get overly consumed with it and what it brings to me, for example, and more importantly, focus on how this can glorify God and what you guys can get out of it. I think if we put all the focus into that, right, everything else will take care of itself. And I think I'm just applying that to an example of that in my situation, but there's a lot of other things too. If you really, and I think it's okay to have hobbies and things like that and really have big time interests, but don't let it overly consume you. Of course, lust is huge. That's something that many people struggle with. We all struggle with it at times, and just being too much lovers of money, things like that. And it's easy. We all do it. We all sin, but just don't let that kind of stuff consume you, and let God's will work into that situation. So what you're blessed with can be used, and ultimately, what you're trying to do, God can work through it and you can get blessed for it. So anyways, that's all I got, guys. Thank you for tuning in. God bless all y'all, and have a wonderful rest of your day.